Alright, CNT120, Chapter 4 Lab. We just got done looking at our UDP header with our DNS, and I've left that Wireshark open. If by chance you closed it, what you'll want to do is back in your browser, go to your history and clear your recent history, start a new Wireshark, and then reload a web page and capture that web page loading over in Wireshark, and then stop, and then you can refilter to find where you are. Okay, you can do that. That's fine. So here we're going to take we're now going to take a look at the TCP header, and we're going to specifically look at the three-way handshake. Now remember, UDP was used for quick sending of information, like, hey, what's the IP address of the server? Boom, DNS responds, here it is. Well, when I now want to do something like load the web page, that's not going to be just one chunk of data and it's done. It's going to be many files. This menu bar, this picture, this graphic over here, this link for this video, this link for that, this link for this. Many things need to come in. So when I load a web page, I'm going to need the TCP to make sure everything's numbered, everything's accounted for, everything's delivered. So with TCP, before the data occurs, we actually have that three-way handshake that you hopefully remember reading about. So we're now going to try to look for that in our packet capture that we have. We're going to try to find that. So over here, I have my DNS response, and here was the query, here's the response. In this case, I ended up looking at the loading the hack web page, which that's fine. I'm going to look at, here's packet number 2035. I'm going to kind of keep that in mind. I'll highlight that and keep that in mind, because when I get rid of this filter up here, all the packets are going to go back here in line, if you will. I'm now going to try to look for right near this, I'm going to try to look for me talking to that server. I'm going to try to look for that occurring. Here was the hack, DNS, etc. So I'm going to try to look for TCP near there. Here was 172.21, 172.16.4, and in here it said, hey, the address is 5270. So I'm going to look for, hopefully, me talking to 5270, and I'm not seeing it right off the bat. It's usually near it. So I think I might try to do a brand new capture here real quick. Yeah, let's do that. Let's try to do a brand new capture. I'm going to go here to my browser. Let's clear recent history. I'm going to clear it all of it. And I'll open up a new tab. I'm going to go over here to Wireshark. I'm going to do a brand new capture. And in here I'm going to go www.hack.edu. and let that load. And over here in my Wireshark, I'll do a stop. And I'll look for DNS again. And I'm going to try to look for, yeah, here's me asking for hack.edu. And the response coming back. So around packet 118, I'll close that out. So around 118, right near there we go, there it is. Here's the response coming back. If I look at the response, it says in here, hey, the address you're looking for, blah, 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 there it is, okay. So right near that is now me and the web server talking, me and the web server, that 5270. So I'm going to highlight that. That should be one of my three-way handshakes right there. I'm going to right-click on that. I'm going to follow TCP stream. Cool beans. Now, this being an HTTPS, what I'll see is a three-way handshake here, these three right here, and then I'm going to see this TLS kick in. This is the S, HTTPS. This is the S part of HTTPS. This is the secure exchange encryption keys, etc., etc. All right, that's what we're seeing there. So if by chance you're having trouble finding yours, do the same thing I just did, something like this, and you can hopefully find your three-way handshake right here at the beginning. Well, now that I have that, here's my first, I'll highlight that. Let's take a look at this first TCP packet that's here, first TCP. Here's the Ethernet header, IP header. Let's look at the TCP header. As you'll see, there's a lot more header fields here than we had with UDP. A lot more header fields. Source port coming from my browser. Destination port 443. That is HTTPS. We then see sequence number. Now this is relative. This is like hitting the on your car, the odometer. You usually have like a little trip meter that you can reset to 0, so you know how many miles you drove. That's kind of what this did. It basically said, okay, in my data sequence, this is essentially 0. Now, my byte counter is really this. That's what it really is. So there's quite a few bytes there, but it's like, okay, relatively speaking, we're at 0. And the next one we should have is byte number 1. Again, acknowledgement number is 0 because we're going to be communicating with the server. We're going to have its number coming back to us. If I look at the flags field, this is indicating the sync bit is set. That's what this shows you here. The sync bit has been set. Down here's the window size. How many bytes of data can be sent before we expect an acknowledgement. So we have 64,000 bytes of data we can send before we expect an acknowledgement. So there is the key TCP header fields. The main ones being our port numbers here. What service are we talking to? Sequence number, acknowledgement number. This is how we account for everything. We number everything and we acknowledge everything being sent. Flags lets us know whether we're setting up or closing down or we need to resend something. Here's our window size of how much data we can send before expecting an acknowledgement. All right, so now that we found those should look like what you read about in the book. Let's look a little closer at the flags field here. We should see sync for the first handshake, which I do. This is me talking to the web server saying, hey, I'd like to synchronize with you. Well, the next one should be the server talking to me, which it is. And in here I see it's coming from the server to my browser. Its sequence number is 0 because it's the first thing sent. And its acknowledgement is 1. Because I sent 0, it's going to acknowledge with 1. And what that means is since I sent 0, it's saying, hey, I recognize that I got your 0 packet, if you will. The next thing I'm expecting from you is packet 1. Byte number 1, if you will. So it's acknowledging my 0 and saying the next thing that should come from you is labeled number 1. If I look at my flags field, it acknowledges my synchronization. And it says, oh, by the way, I'm going to synchronize with you. And synchronize is a fancy way to say, hey, we need to share our counters so we know how everything is being numbered. So we know, I'm starting at box number 500, you're starting at box number 1200. Whatever. As long as I know where the numbering starts, I can now keep track of it. And that's what's going on there. And then the window size down here. The server's like, hey, I can't quite send so much at a time. This is how much I can send before an acknowledgement occurs. So there's the second handshake. If I click on the third handshake, it's me again talking to the server. If I look, here it's coming from my browser going to the server. Sequence number is now 1. I previously sent 0, now I'm sending 1. I'm going to acknowledge the 0 that the server sent and acknowledge it with a 1. Hey, I got your 0, now I'm going to acknowledge with 1. The next thing coming from you is actually 1. And then here, I'm going to acknowledge the synchronization from the server. So the acknowledge bit is set on this one. And down here, the window size has dropped down. So this can, depending on how busy our systems are, we can make these larger or smaller. Larger if I'm not busy, I can send more data. Smaller if I'm busy and I can't send as much data. All right, so there's my three-way handshake that occurs before we even load the web page. And then what I actually see here is this is the actual encryption part for the HTTPS, and then I would actually see the sending of data. Here's application data being sent. Okay, that's what I end up seeing down there. But there's my three-way handshake. Okay, we want to capture that. We want to save that. So what we're going to do is in the top menu of Wireshark, we're going to look at the statistics option and flow graph. So up here, statistics, we're going to look, flow graph is about halfway down right there. We're going to look for flow graph. And in here, I want to do a setting or two. I want to do limit to display. So down here at the bottom, I want to limit to display. And I want to just do TCP. I just want to do TCP flows. And I should see the sync, acknowledge, acknowledge. That's what I should see. There's my three-way handshake. There it is. And what I'll do now is with that, I'm going to do a save as. I'll call it three-way handshake, and I'm going to make sure it's a PDF. So I will do a save as. So down here, I think the option we're looking for is export. We'll go to, I'm going to go to documents from me. Actually, I think I had my Windows file on the desktop, or do I have it in the documents? No, I have it in the documents. My Windows text file, I think I put in the documents. I'm going to put it there. And I will call this Chapter 4 Lab, and I'll call it TCP three-way handshake. Oh my goodness, if I can type. I'll make sure it's set for PDF, and then I'll do save. And I can close all this out. I'll close that out. I'm going to go to my documents folder, and here should be my three-way handshake. If I open that PDF up, I should see this right here that I looked at. There's that three-way handshake. That's what we're looking for right there. Okay, so there is looking at our TCP header, looking at the TCP header fields, and then more specifically looking at the three-way handshake. We'll come back in the next part and look at our IP4 or IP4 header.